She set the photo on the kitchen table like it was evidence in a trial I didn't know I was standing. "You two have looked at each other like that since you were kids," she said. And just like that, 20 years of pretending I didn't know what I felt cracked straight down the middle. "My name is Ryan Coleman. I'm 29, I fix HVAC systems for a living, and up until that Sunday afternoon, I would have told you my life was simple. Work, gym, dinner with my parents on Thursdays, and Sadie Whitfield, who had been my best friend since we were 7 years old, and stealing juice boxes from each other's lunch bags. Sadie and I grew up 2 houses apart in a small suburb outside Columbus. Her mom, Carol, used to keep a spare key to our house on her ring, and my mom kept one to theirs, because that's just how close the families were. We rode the same bus, failed the same algebra tests, and got matching bruises falling off the same skateboard the summer we were 12. People used to ask if we were dating. We'd both laugh like the question was absurd. "She's my best friend," I'd say. "He's basically my brother," she'd say. We said it so many times it started to sound true, even when it wasn't. Here's the part one never told anyone. Somewhere around 16, the joke stopped being funny to me. I didn't say anything. You don't risk 12 years of friendship over a feeling you're not even sure is real. So I buried it. I dated other women. She dated other men. We stood at each other's worst breakups holding ice cream and bad advice, and neither of us ever said the things sitting quietly underneath all of it. That Sunday started like any other. Carol had invited me over to help clean out her attic, which was less an invitation and more a summons, because Carol Whitfield doesn't ask twice. Sadie was out of town for a work conference, so it was just me, a dusty attic, and 40 years of a family's accumulated life in cardboard boxes. "You're the only one strong enough to carry the big boxes down," Carol told me, handing me a mug of coffee I hadn't asked for. "And the only one who won't complain about it." "Flattery gets you free labor," I said, "noted for future scams." She laughed the way she always did, warm and a little wicked, like she knew something I didn't. I should have paid more attention to that laugh. We worked for almost 2 hours, sorting through old holiday decorations, a box of Sadie's childhood art projects, a stack of yearbooks with the spines cracked from being reread too many times. Carol narrated most of it. "This ornament was from Sadie's first Christmas. This ugly ceramic frog was a gift from an ex-boyfriend she still won't admit she liked." Somewhere in the middle of all that, she pulled out a shoebox I didn't recognize, tucked way back near the eaves. "Oh," she said, and her voice changed. Softer. "I forgot I still had these. Inside were photographs. Not the digital kind, actual printed photos, the kind nobody bothers with anymore. Sadie and me at 9, missing the same front tooth. Sadie and me at 13, arguing over a board game. Sadie and me at 17, at prom. Except we hadn't gone together, we'd gone with other people and ended up dancing next to each other anyway, because that's just what we did." Carol went quiet for a moment, flipping through them slower than the rest. Then she stopped on one and just stared at it. "What?" I asked. She turned it toward me without a word. It was from the summer we were 15. We were sitting on the hood of my dad's old truck, and I wasn't looking at the camera at all. I was looking at Sadie, and she was looking at me, and neither of us seemed to notice anyone else existed. It wasn't a posed shot. It was one of those accidental photographs that catches something truer than anyone intended. "I remember taking this," Carol said quietly. "I called your names about 6 times before either of you looked over." I laughed, a little uneasy. "We were probably arguing about something." "You weren't arguing." Carol set the photo down on the box lid between us, gently, like it might bruise. "Ryan, I've had this photo for 14 years. I've looked at it more times than I probably should admit." She looked up at me, and there wasn't a trace of teasing in her face anymore. "You two have looked at each other like that since you were kids." I didn't say anything right away, because there wasn't anything safe to say. The attic felt smaller than it had 5 minutes earlier. "Carol," I started. "I'm not trying to embarrass you," she said. "I'm 58 years old, and I've watched my daughter come home from every relationship she's ever had a little more tired than the last one. And every single time, the person she calls first isn't the man she just broke up with. It's you. My chest went tight in a way I wasn't prepared for. She calls me because we're close. Carol gave me a look that told me exactly how much that answer was worth to her, which was nothing. Ryan, I've known you since you were 7 years old. I changed the bandage the first time you fell off that skateboard. I know when you're being honest, and I know when you're being careful. Right now, you're being careful. I looked down at the photograph again. 15-year-old me, looking at 15-year-old Sadie like she was the only interesting thing in the entire county. Some things, apparently, don't change as much as you convince yourself they have. It doesn't matter what I felt at 15, I said finally. She's my best friend. If I say something and it goes wrong, I don't just lose the maybe. I lose everything that's already real. Carol nodded slowly, like she'd expected that answer and had already prepared for it. That's a fair fear. I'm not going to tell you it isn't. She picked the photo back up, studying it one more time. But I'll tell you what I told her father the week before I married him. Being careful doesn't protect you from losing something. It just guarantees you never got to keep it either. That sentence landed harder than anything Brad adjacent could have thrown at me in a room full of strangers. It sat in my chest for the rest of the afternoon. Does she know you have this? I asked, nodding at the photo. No. Carol slid it across the box lid toward me. But I think you should be the one to show her. I stared at the photograph like it might rearrange itself into something less complicated. You're giving this to me. I'm giving you an excuse, Carol said. And for the first time all afternoon, that wicked little smile came back. Use it or don't. But don't come back to this attic in 20 years still pretending you don't know what that photo means. I drove home with the picture on my passenger seat like it was something fragile. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept picturing Sadie's face in that photo, the way neither of us had noticed the camera, the way we hadn't needed to perform for anyone because we were too busy just looking at each other. Sadie got back from her conference 2 days later. She texted me the second she landed. Home. Exhausted. Tell me something good happened while I was gone. I stared at that message for a long time before I answered. Come over. I have something to show you. She showed up an hour later in leggings and an oversized hoodie, hair thrown up in the kind of messy bun that only looked effortless because she'd had 29 years of practice. This better be good, she said, dropping onto my couch. I flew middle seat next to a man who narrated his entire sandwich. Your mom found something in the attic, I said. Sadie's eyebrows went up. Should I be scared? A little. I handed her the photo. She looked at it for a long moment, and I watched her face shift the way mine probably had, from confusion to recognition to something quieter and harder to name. I remember this day, she said softly. You'd just gotten your dad's truck detailed, and you wouldn't stop talking about it. You weren't listening to a word I said. No, she admitted, still staring at the photo. I wasn't. The silence that followed wasn't the comfortable kind we usually had. This one had weight to it. Your mom said something to me, I said, when she gave me this. Sadie looked up. What? She said we've looked at each other like that since we were kids. I made myself keep going, because if I stopped now I'd never start again. And she's not wrong, Sadie. I've looked at you like that for a long time. Longer than I've ever let myself admit, even to you. Especially to you. Her breath caught, just slightly, but I heard it. I told myself it didn't matter. I continued. Because what we already have is too good to risk. But I think I've been calling that being careful when really it was just being scared. Sadie set the photo down on the coffee table, her hand not quite steady. Ryan, you don't have to say anything, I said quickly. I just needed you to know. I needed to stop pretending that photo was an accident, because it wasn't. I wasn't looking at you like that by accident. I don't think I've ever looked at you any other way. For a second, she didn't move. Then she reached over, picked the photo back up, and looked at it one more time before setting it face down on the table, like she'd seen everything she needed to see in it. I used to think I was imagining it, she said quietly. The way you'd get quiet sometimes when I talked about someone I was seeing. I told myself I was reading into things because I wanted to. My pulse kicked up. Wanted to? She met my eyes properly then. No joke ready. No easy exit line. Ryan, I've been in love with you since I was probably 15 years old, sitting on the hood of your dad's stupid truck. I just never thought you'd catch up. I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for half my life. I think I caught up around the same time. I just spent 13 years lapping myself in circles pretending I hadn't. That got a real laugh out of her, shaky and disbelieving, the kind of laugh that comes right before someone lets themselves believe something good is actually happening. So what now? Now, I said, moving closer on the couch. I stopped being careful. She didn't pull away. If anything, she leaned in. Good, she whispered. Because I'm tired of being your best friend in every sentence except the one that actually matters. So I kissed her. Not the rushed, nervous kind, but slow, like something both of us had been circling for half our lives and had finally stopped running from. When we pulled back, she was smiling in a way I'd never quite seen on her before, bright and a little stunned, like she still couldn't believe we'd actually gotten here. Well, she said, my mom is going to be unbearable about this. Your mom basically orchestrated this, I said. She handed me the evidence like a prosecutor. Sadie laughed again, leaning her head against my shoulder. Remind me to thank her. After I recover from finding out my best friend's been in love with me since high school. In my defense, I said, so have you. She smiled against my shoulder. Touché. 6 months later, Carol still keeps that photograph framed on her mantle, right next to our engagement picture, which she likes to point out looks almost identical if you squint. Same two people, same unguarded expressions, 20 years apart. She tells anyone who'll listen that she always knew, and honestly, at this point, none of us doubt her. Sadie still calls me first after every hard day. The only difference now is she doesn't have to pretend that's just what best friends do. So tell me, if your best friend's parent handed you an old photo and said something like that, would you have said it out loud, or would you have kept pretending like I almost did? And have you ever realized someone had been looking at you a certain way for years before you finally caught up? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.